welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Emerald Coast. I'm Amanda Pyburn, a member here and your service leader this morning. If you're visiting, you'll find more information about us on our website, our Facebook page, and you can even see lots of old services on our YouTube channel to get to know us better. Please fill out a visitor card at the blue table if you are new today so that we can connect with you and send you information about upcoming events. We are a religious community united by a shared interest in exploration to find our own paths. Our shared UU principles, listed on the back of your order of service, and and we are committed to service, spiritual growth, and caring fellowship. Got lost. We come each week to listen, to learn, and be changed by the experience of interacting with others. Announcements are also in your order of service. There are a couple of good things coming up, like Easter. Check out the plans for Easter. Start getting your Easter bonnets ready. And a new member ceremony and child dedication ceremony. So there are lots of things coming up to help you get involved. After the service, we have a brief time for refreshments and conversation, and then we have second hour small discussion groups. This week, we've got Porch Swing up front, led by Denny Lauer, to talk about the speakers you're going to hear. Extra Extra in the library, led by Josh Ashley, that's current events. And a choir rehearsal in the Harmony Room. If you like to sing, you can always drop by, even if you never have people. And now the prelude prepares us for the service. Our chalice lighting is a little different today. Claire's going to go ahead and light the flame, but all the kids are going to come up, even if you just walked in the door. Come on up. They are going to demonstrate a very simple chalice lighting for us, and then we're going to do it again with everybody participating, so pay attention. And the words are up there. We are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands that are ready to serve. Now it's everybody ready? We are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands that are ready to serve. Thank you. Please stand as you're able for the opening hymn. The sun that shines, it's trying, theoretically at least, maybe, number 19 in your gray hymnal. have a responsive reading this morning. It's titled Make Art by Rachel Huckle. I'll begin, and if you will read the words in italics. Make art, not because it prepares you for what you are going to be, but because it prepares you for who you are going to be. I do not yet know what I'm going to spend all my days doing. But I know who I'm going to spend my days being. I make art because no matter where I end up, I want to be creative, I want to be thoughtful, I want to be kind. Our time for all ages is also a little different today, and it is going to involve everyone's participation. We do have a story by Miss Amy, but then, since we're talking about creativity and art, you're all going to be making something. So, here we go.
Okay. So you can leave that one up there during the whole story, or until I tell you to switch. So I'm going to tell you a story today. Am I good with this mic? Okay. So really it's two stories, but first I want to tell you that since this program is about art and being creative, that the shirt that I have on, my youngest sister is a tie-dye artist, and she did the tie-dye on this shirt. So the first story I'm going to tell you is a little bit sad. This is the story of Sadako, and she was a little Japanese girl. She was born in Hiroshima, Japan, on January the 7th, 1943. So that means she was just 2 years old when the atomic bomb was dropped on that city on August the 6th, 1945. By December of 1945, approximately 140,000 people had died, including those killed directly by the bomb and those killed by what they called the deadly black rain that fell. And rescue crews and medical personnel that rushed to the city to help out were also killed. A lot of residents continued to die in the years that followed, and they died from what they called then the atomic bomb disease, which was leukemia. Sadako and her brother and parents managed to flee the city and seemed to be okay. Her grandparents were all killed, but they got out. But in December of 1954, Sadako went to spend winter vacation from school at her aunt's house. So now she's 12 years old or 11 years old. When she arrived, she had what they thought was a mild cold, but her mother noticed there were lumps and bumps around her jawline and behind her ears. They kept taking her to doctors, but eventually she was diagnosed with leukemia. And in February of 1955, she was admitted to the Red Cross Hospital. Sadako's teacher told her class that she was in the hospital being treated for leukemia, which at that time basically was incurable. They couldn't do anything. And her friends in her class took turns visiting her. In August of that year, the nurses brought into the wards long strings of paper cranes, like this, brought them into the patients and put them around the rooms. These had been folded by the Red Cross Youth Club at the high school, and they were in many types of paper and many colors, and Sadako loved the cranes, but she didn't know why they were significant. string of smaller ones. So she asked her father, and her father told her that giving paper cranes to someone in the hospital means that you hope they'll get well soon. In Japan, the crane is a mystical creature and is said to live for 1,000 years. So an ancient Japanese legend promises that anyone who folds 1,000 cranes, one for each year of the crane's life, will be granted a wish. So Sadako began folding cranes. And even though she was very weak and her hands hurt, and there wasn't much paper around, so she used wrappers off of hospital equipment and torn up bits of foil from medicine bottles and things like that. But she folded cranes and folded cranes. She found that the folding became a meditation and a way of focusing her mind and energy. She did fold 1,000 cranes. In fact, she folded more than 1,300, but her wish did not come true. Sadako died in October. She was cremated in her dress-up kimono, surrounded by hundreds of cranes she had folded, and many more folded by her classmates. The other cranes she folded were given to her friends and classmates. So after she died, there had already been established in Hiroshima, the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park. But after she died, her classmates and her teacher joined together and started a fundraising campaign to place a statue of her in the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park. And eventually they did. They raised, which sounds like it was a huge amount of money. It sounds like a lot of money, like 4.5 million yen. Which, I mean, yen, it was like $15,000. Yeah, they were like doing that. So, but Jeff Bezos, apparently, too bad, wasn't alive at the time, so they couldn't ask him. Or he was very young. Anyway, so the statue, which is called the Statue for the Children of the Atomic Bomb, was dedicated on May 5th, 1958. And if you'll go to the next slide. So that's the top of the statue. It's really, really tall, and that's a picture of Sadako, or a statue of Sadako with one of her cranes. And underneath there's a bell in the shape of a crane that you can ring. And people still bring folded cranes and leave them at the statue, particularly on the August the 6th, which is the anniversary of the day the bomb was dropped, and on September the 21st, which is United Nations International Day of Peace. So you can also still send folded cranes to Japan to be placed at the statue, and they will obligingly take a picture of your crane being placed and email it to you. And you can leave a message, and all this is recorded in a database of people who send cranes and their messages. And I put up on the bulletin board in the back, I put a printout from the site of the address to send to and the instructions in case you're interested. So what does all this have to do with today's program, which is supposed to be about, art and creativity and stuff? And so now I'll tell you the rest of the story. So many years ago, a man came to our house for dinner. My father did business with a lot of people, kind of all over the world, because he had really a magical job. He was a chemist, but as a chemist, he made color. I can't imagine anything more joyful than being the guy who makes all the different colors. He made pigments for paints and enamels and stuff, so he consulted with a lot of different companies. And the man who came to the house that night was Japanese. And he was a really nice man. I must have been, so I was more than 7 because we lived in the big house, but less than 13. So somewhere in there. And he very patiently, because there was 4 of us old enough at the time and 1 baby, He very patiently sat downstairs in the family room with us and taught us how to fold the cranes. And I have never forgotten. It's in my fingers. I don't even have to look. Okay? So I didn't know anything about Sadako. I didn't know anything about origami in general. I just knew that you can make these little birds. So as I grew up, I learned about origami, that you can make other things. You can make boats. You can make these like little star flower things. Pinwheels. You can make a fox, yes. Hats. You probably can make a Pikachu, yes. Mm-hmm. What else do I have in here? Oh, the little cup. And you remember in elementary school when you did these little, you remember these? Yeah. These little things where you tell each other's fortunes. You remember those? Okay. That was actually the first origami, besides the cranes, that I ever learned. And I didn't know it was origami. I just thought it was like little things in school. As long as you just fold the paper and don't cut it. That's my rules. One piece of paper. So this is the crane that I can't remember the man's name. I can't remember what company he worked for. It's just like he was just this nice man that came to dinner. Taught us how to make these things. And the cranes he taught us how to make fly. Okay? This is a couple, and I'm sure he did this because it was kids he was doing it with. So he taught us how to do this. Now, years and years later, somehow I heard about Sadako, and I was like, wow, this like was really something, the cranes. Well, I used to make cranes, so anybody who was ever a teacher, you can just cover your ears. In class, when I got bored, and I could make little teeny tiny ones, I'd just make a little square of paper and make cranes, and at the end of the class, they'd all be lined up inside my desk. Right? Because it's meditative. You're doing something with your hands, right? Okay. So I thought that I would show you how I make these cranes, and there are other ways, but the ones I make fly. And then we can finish this string, if we can all as a group, and end up with 1,000 cranes like by September the 21st, by the next International Day of Peace. So I kind of do this in my sleep. So. I have a bigger piece of paper. So I would prefer that the ones we string up, you only do like a 6-inch square maximum. I have, so next slide. This is 2 sides of the same piece of paper. Some of them have 2 sides and some of them are the same on both sides. It doesn't matter. Okay? So what I've done is all the preliminary folds. So you have lines in the paper to fold on. So every single fold gets made on one of the lines that's already there. Okay? So next slide. So the first thing you do is fold it in half and make a triangle. And if you open up one side of the triangle and push the edge in, you have to hold it in the middle, like right next to the line, and push it in and squish it flat. You only fold on lines that are already there. If you fold on something, then you didn't do it. All the way in. And other side, all the way in. And you end up with a square or a diamond, a square, with open at the top. Don't worry, I worked with the kids for hours on this and like nobody got it. I think Karen's got it. Good, that's the first start. So when you have your pyramid, you take one corner and push it in. Not quite. So let's go to the next slide. I can't remember what I put. Okay, now the next one. Okay, that's the other side. So go to the next one. And the next one. Okay, so that's what I've got now. I've got a square. Yeah, some of you will have picked small pieces of paper. So now we have this square. Now, next slide. Now we're going to, because we have an open end, we're going to kind of pull one of the points up, like it's a big mouth. And we're going to push in both sides. So you have like a big mouth. If you turn it on its side, it's kind of like a big mouth with lips. That's okay. I don't want to take up like all the whole like thing, so we'll just go. And then you do the same thing on the other side. You make another big mouth with big lips, and you end up with a kite. It's kind of like magic. I'll tell you what, so during second hour, I think I'm supposed to be up with the kids, but anybody wants to come and sit and drive yourself crazy folding these things. Remember that this man taught like a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 4-year-old to do this. He had the most patience. So once you have a kite, you have one of the big sides, you just flip it up, and then the other side you flip up. So what? Yeah. So go to the, let's see, the next one. Okay, and the next one. And the next one. I don't remember what it is. See how it's pushing to the inside? And go to the next one. And you end up with that. So that's basically your bird. Then you have to make a decision. Which is the head and which is the tail. It doesn't matter. But on your head side, you just bend down a little beak. Yeah, like that. Yay. So then to make it fly, you have to kind of make sure the wings are pushed down real good and curled a little bit. And you have to pinch it right up under the neck. And then you don't pull the tail down, you pull it out. And it flies. And then you bring them all in. So I think the biggest ones, this is a 6-inch square of paper, that should be about the biggest. Oh no, this is bigger. These are 6-inch squares of paper. That's about as big as they ought to get, what I handed out. Okay? And you bring them in and we'll string them up. And we get 1,000. So 1,000 is a lot. When we get 1,000, we'll do something. I'm not sure what. But this was my extra meditation. I have done these things, this and the little flowers. Yes? So we're supposed to have a birthday party and an International Peace Day. Yes. So we'll do that. So we'll try to make these, and if you need any help, I'll be glad to help you. But I'll string them up. You can use whatever paper you have. Just make sure you start with a square that's square, that's 6 inches on a slide or smaller. We'll talk about it, Tanya. But anyway, so this is my meditative art that I've done for years and years and years, and I've probably made 16,000 cranes over the years because it was like I did them in school. I did them when I'm listening to lectures. I might do them in church out of the bulletins. You could use the church bulletins. You just have to cut it into perfect squares. Yeah. Okay? So I thank you all for listening and for trying. And I do actually have somewhere, I have printed instructions for doing the flapping wing crane. But the way this man taught us was to do all the folds first, and I think it's easier. So any instructions you find are not going to be exactly how I learned how to do it. But anyway, have fun with it. And if you get some done, and I have more paper if you want, like origami paper. But if you can use any kind of paper. It doesn't matter. I will. Thank you.
Since everyone's staying in the service today, you guys should just move back and keep on working. There you go. Sure. Yeah, that can fit. As you know, it's pledge drive time, and our president is going to give us a quick update.
Good morning, folks. Good morning. Thanks for being out today. We've got some very good news and some milestones to go with our pledge drive. The good news first. Guess how much we've raised so far? That's almost $98,157,000. So everyone, give yourselves a hand. That means that we do have some ways to go. $7,753 to go. And I would like to congratulate the 52% of our membership who has participated so far. Thank you so much. You've taken us so far. We're just right about across the finish line. Now, in order for us to continue fundraising in the community, we need to be able to hold our heads high, for lack of a better phrase, and should be able to brag that we have 100% membership participation. It doesn't take much. Membership is something to be proud of. And a donation is a part of membership. It's a requirement of membership, but it doesn't have to be a whole lot. It can be just what you can do. So if we can just get across that finish line with 100% participation, that is the goal this year. Then we can hold our heads high and brag to local community efforts, banks, restaurants, or what have you, to give to our service and to give to our DRE program, so on and so forth. So let's get that 100% participation. We'll be starting to make phone calls this week. Thank you so much for getting us so close, and hopefully we'll be at the finish line next week. Give yourselves a hand.
I'm the second part of the stewardship moment. I joined this fellowship in 1979, so I am not the oldest member, but the person who's been here the longest of all of you. So I was born and raised in Valparaiso, right around the corner on Bayshore Drive. I'm fourth generation Okaloosa County, and I went to St. Mary's. Great years. I went to Ruckle. I went away to convent boarding school. I was a dyed-in-the-wool Catholic until I lived in Massachusetts, and my 6-year-old daughter, who had been baptized Catholic but had since not been to church, but her friends were Catholic, and so she wanted to go to catechism class. So, of course, I let her go to catechism class, and then she was making her first communion, and I sat this 6-year-old down and said, Marion, I just want you to know I really don't believe any of the things that they're telling you. But if you want to go, I'll be happy to let you go. And then we decided it was time for us to look around. So I joined the Fairhaven Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Fairhaven, Massachusetts. It was built in the early 1900s. It was a beautiful Gothic structure with stone. Aaron, who had built it, had brought Italian carvers over to do the most beautiful woodwork. When you opened the front door, there was a little wooden mouse that was up. That was the church mouse. I mean, a lot of hidden things. There was a manse next door where we had the kids' programs. And then I came home in 1978 with my children, and I found out that there was a Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Fort Walton Beach on Florida Blanca. Now, Karen's been there. It was about 1,200 square feet. There was no children's program, but there was a time for the children to go into the other room with somebody to do something, French lessons or whatever. And so that's when I joined. The difference between the incredible 1902 Gothic church and the 1,200 square foot, at best, Florida Blanca place was not what kept me there. What kept me there was the people, which is why I come back. It's why I pledge. It's why I have put UUFEC in my will. So don't rush, but at some point, you will be pleasantly surprised. So I encourage all of you, we need this fellowship in this community. We need to be seen on this corner for people to see that there are other things here and other churches here besides the evangelical ones that are all over our community. We need to be seen. We need to be proud that we're Unitarian, and we need to pledge. So that's my stewardship moment. Thank you.
Thank you. You're invited to share personal events in your life by dropping a pebble into the bowl silently or speaking a few words into the microphone, so we may support each other in sorrows and celebrate together in joy. ties to what they're going to be talking about as well. So I think instead of taking the whole moment, I'm just going to read it to you as a reading. It's called To Be an Artist, Anonymous. It is not necessary to make one's living from one's creations, nor is it necessary to have pieces hanging in museums or published in books or praised by critics. What is necessary is to live with your eyes wide open, to breathe in the colors of the mountain and sky, cityscape and landscape, to know the sound of leaves rustling, the smell of the snow, the texture of bark. It is necessary to rub our hands all over life and to collect experiences and shape them into forms other people might recognize, and to be creative with every moment we have. So if the greeters will come forward to take the offering. If you're paying your pledge with a check today, please make a note in the memo line. Share the plate is where we split half of what you've given with a local charity. Our local charity this month is Shelter House. Shelter House supports victims of domestic and sexual violence by providing shelter, intervention, and prevention programs. Please be generous. Our speakers today, Kenny and Denny Lauer, are among our most active longtime members. They have served this fellowship in possibly every possible volunteer role, from teaching the children to serving on the board in many different capacities, including past president and our current treasurer, to heading committees, creating services, and on and on. Today they share with us their love of art.
Good morning, and thank you, Amanda, for that wonderful meditation. It really does describe being an artist. The starving artist is not just a quote. It can be very true. Very few artists are really making a lot of money in their art. But another quote that's very typical and appropriate is a picture is worth 1,000 words. So today we have brought our art to you so that you can see what we do work on beyond just daily living. And we're trying to explain some of the spirituality that we get from doing these pieces. A lot of them are very complex, some are very simple. And I started out with a family of artists. My grandmother was a commercial artist, my mother was an art teacher, and my father was a chemist, and at night he came home and painted. So then I went to the art school at Syracuse. So art has been in my background. But it wasn't until I went to SUSE, Southeast Unitarian Universalist Summer Institute, that I really started doing the artwork that you see here today. And took a class, a very simple class in stringing beads. Now, I had loved beads when I was young and played around with them, but never really created anything of significance. But in that class, it kind of awoke my interest in beadwork. So one of the things for artwork and creativity is inspiration. And as you can see, I'm not sure which way to go. Inspiration, this is a picture of the morning at the mountain in Highlands, North Carolina. That is another place that we had classes. In fact, that's where Denny got started doing his Kumihimo work. But the inspiration of the beautiful sunrises and sunsets over the mountains, it just gave a lot of creative inspiration and thought. Another, next, is color. And you'll be able to see from some of my pieces that I just love blue and green and amethyst and copper and a whole range of rainbow colors. Another part of beadwork is the excitement of pattern. There are a lot of different kinds of patterns that the beads put together, whether they're large or small. They can create excitement or they can create serenity. There's a pattern that I created for one that came out of some of our travels, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The design of dots of color. Each little bead can be part of a whole, and that was part of the influence. Next, please. The influence of great masters. Okay, when I was in high school in the Albany Museum, I saw Seurat, this painting, the Sunday afternoon on the Grand Isle of Jeté. It's a very famous painting that is created just with dots of color. You can see the enlargements on the side. It's part of where the sailboat is up on the top. So he created this whole beautiful painting just by putting dots of color. And that's the creation you can get from doing beadwork. Next. Okay. The beauty of nature also, with leaves and trees, and I did a whole series of work just inspired by the leaves of nature. These are some of the bracelets that I have done, and I did get an award for the one on the right at the Arts and Design Society. That piece sold right away. In fact, I transferred it to a necklace. The purchaser wanted a necklace, and so she was able to convert it from a necklace to a bracelet and back and forth. And that's part of the creative process, is doing something that is different, that hasn't been done before. Also, the dragonfly has been a strong inspiration. We have dragonflies that fly over our pool, and they're gorgeous in color, beautiful in flight. And so I've designed many dragonflies, small ones, big ones, little ones, all different sizes, just with the kinds of beads that are available. Effects of the world affairs is the next slide. And that, I'm wearing a necklace that Denny and I both created. He did the kumihimo part, which he's going to describe, that has little flowers designed in the cord. And I did the beadwork, which are the Ukrainian colors. This is an ode to Ukraine. And so they're Ukrainian colors, and the beadwork in the front is the sunflower, which is the Ukrainian flower. We also get inspiration just from competitions. At the Arts and Design Society, they come up with a theme for a different show every month. And so this one was the something about Shakespeare. So this was my interpretation of modern Shakespeare. Actually, I created it from one of Denny's ties and some fabric. It's a collar that you can wear.
It was a nice time.
Now it's an even nicer collar.
Yes, dear.
We also are inspired by travel, and this is a picture of the Dingle Peninsula in Ireland. So just the shape and what's under the sea was an inspiration for this one. Now, one inspiration that you may appreciate is some of the chalice work that I've been doing. I have created chalices from many, many different kinds of beads, flame beads or crystals for flames, and even my earrings are African. There's an African bead to create the chalice. And I created these little cards, which we have several up here, that are a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson with a chalice on them. All our pieces, not all, most of our pieces up here are for sale, and so we do share them. Part of the joy of the creative process for me has been the acceptance by the public in appreciating our work and wanting to buy it. The beads themselves are known, if you run them through your fingers a lot of times when you're stressed, they can just calm you. For me, it's a double duty, because then after I've created something and somebody sees an appreciation in it, then that brings even more joy. So Denny's going to talk about his kumihimo work and his inspirations.
I started off at the Summer Institute. It was a fall retreat up in North Carolina with UUs. Fun, a lot of fun. Karen took the class. I just kind of stepped in, and I enjoyed it because it's very mathematical and rhythmic. I'll talk on it in a sec. It's kumihimo, which is a Japanese braiding, beading. I did some work. I really enjoyed it. And anything else, Karen mentioned selling. One time I did a nice piece, and she said, "You could sell this. I'll put it up for sale. How much do you want to sell it for?" I said, "Well, let's see. I was an engineer. I made $70 an hour. This took me 10 hours. $700 plus, $200 for the work. $900. She said, well, I tell you what, move the decimal point over 1, divide it by half, and then we'll reduce it a little more, and we'll go from there. And I'm going, I'm working for below minimum wage. What was her response? Welcome to art. So obviously I'm not doing this to pay for our cruises. Kumihimo. Kumihimo is a mainly Japanese braiding beading technique. It was introduced by the Buddhists into Japan in the 5th century. They used it to make basically strings of beads and cloth to decorate their ceremonies. It was then picked up by the samurai. The samurai saw it as a way of meditation, but also they used it to tie their armor together, to decorate their armor and their swords. If you see Japanese swords with all the strings and silk and everything else hanging, that in many times is kumihimo. Braiding has been with us. Here's an example of 30,000 years ago. The Venus of Wallendorf, her braided hair. So beading and braiding has been with us a few years, as I said. The Native Americans. I'll use this as an example. When they brush their hairs, it is to get their thoughts aligned. When they braid their hair, it is to put their thoughts together into unity. And when they tie that hair, that braid, it is to finalize their thoughts. Some saw string or unbraided hair as weak, and they brought their hairs together for unity. Others saw the streaming hair as part of nature, and then they braided that together. So kumihimo. Kumihimo was introduced originally with many different ways of braiding and tying. It was better introduced because they used their fingers, and it took weeks. They would have their fingers with all the braids and the threads and the silk and tie it and everything else. Well, guess what? I wouldn't be able to do. Then they introduced a disc with bobbins hanging and weighing. And they braid those, and it feeds through. In 1990, a young Japanese woman came up with the kumihimo disc. An inexpensive way with slots and holders so that people could pick up and braid. And that's the kumihimo disc that you may see in craft stores, many places. It's where I picked it up. You have one with 32 slots, one with 64. This because you have to have spaces in between to bead and bring the things over. So you can go throughout 16 strings here. 64, and I can get up to about 32, and then they have a 96 or 40 or more. Okay, I've done a 40. Why do I enjoy art? Because this to me is art. Number one, for me, kumihimo is very mathematical. Also, it was repetitive. I could sit and think meditate as I'm doing it, but I also, if I didn't feel like looking at my belly button while I was doing that and meditating away, I could listen to a book, I could listen to music. I had to be watching what I did, so I could listen to our favorite talking heads, you know. So there were ways I could do this daily. But I got caught into Kumihimo, one, mathematical. You set it all up, you do your patterns, there's hundreds of patterns online and everything else. But then you start learning how they design the patterns and you start your own. And that's what I've been doing is some of my own. I also add beads to it. You feed beads and lock it under a thread and bring it across. And you end up with a much thicker beading kumihimo rice braiding. Here's a 20. This is the one I'm working on here. Okay, it shows as a wave. I'm done with different colors. There's a lot of my threads. You can see I've overdone it, just like I pretty well overdo everything. And most of us, we get into a craft. How many have the boxes sitting to the side? We haven't touched for, we won't even go into that. And then here are the beads. Next slide. Here's some of the work. These are beaded ones, and I put in the pearls. That is that one takes concentration because I do the beading, and then I got to take it all off, feed the pearl through all the holes, put the beads back on, braid the beads in, take them all off, feed this pearl through. So you can see that's very varied. That would cost, if I sold it, would be $2,000. And I get to sell it for, yeah. These are ones that are straight braiding. Yes, dear. She said, quit turning my back. And then here is one of my favorites. This is what Karen and I did together. That was the 42 that took a long time, the braid at the top. And then she made, we didn't make the gold holder, but she made all those sea animals and everything else and hung it on. A few of our others. There's my snake. There is one we did. It's a, it was supposed to be Adam and Eve, and we did the apple and the snake.
The apple and the snake were known as Eve's first big mistake.
No, it was her second. First one was meeting Adam.
And finally, part of the art is in the display. And this is just one of the displays that we've had in various art shows and craft shows. We have a display over here, not quite as elaborate, but it does indicate all the artwork that we've done over a few years.
If I can do this, trust me, everyone can do this. It's a meditation, a spiritual, and a personal thing. I'd like to thank you. I'm running a little late. We'll leave it at that.
Yes, we'll be talking a little bit more about it up front for the porch swing if you're interested after the service. Thank you.
Please stand as you're able for Spirit of Life, number 123. May all our hours together be blessed as this one has been, by open-hearted sharing, learning from one another, and making beautiful harmonies together. May we greet everyone we encounter with the same acceptance and grateful kinship. May we look at the world with fresh eyes, nurturing our own creativity. Blessed be. Please stay seated for the postlude. Please stay for refreshments, conversation, and second hour grace.